eMaint today for this month's Best Practices webinar. And I'm really pleased to have with me a new guest speaker. He's new to our program, but he's certainly not new to the industry. And joining me today is Rothwell, who's a senior consultant with the engineering services team here at eMaint. And he's going to be presenting today's topic, leveraging your CMMS for compliance audits. And a little bit of background on Roy before we get started. As I mentioned, he's a senior consultant with eMaint, and he's been in the maintenance management field for over 25 years, specializing specifically in EAM or CMMS, Maintenance Management System implementations. And his particular point of interest is in helping clients maximize the return on their infrastructure. And one of the things you'll learn about Roy today, and I think it'll be obvious as soon as he starts speaking, that he is a member of our EMEA office located in Dublin, Ireland. And for those of you who know eMaint and have been attending these for a while, you may know, our clients know, we have a location outside of Philadelphia and one in Florida, but you may not be aware that we also opened up an office just over a year ago in Dublin, as being that the World Wide Web is truly global and we have clients in over 50 countries. We opened up an office in EMEA to be able to provide better support to our clients throughout Europe and the Middle East and ultimately the rest of the world. And Roy joined us about a year ago as part of that group. He's also a member, as I mentioned, of our engineering services team. And again, since this is some new news, this is a team that we put together based on some customer feedback earlier this year. Clients wanted help not just in implementing the software and the technical aspects, but also in how to apply this software to solve business problems and improve results. So we did form an engineering services team that know the software as well as best practices and kind of offer that blanket of service. And so, Roy, thank you for joining us today. And Roy, can you maybe tell our listeners a little bit as they're logging in? You've been doing this quite some time, and why is this topic important? What prompted you to want to address this topic today of a CMMS and compliance?
Well, thank you, Rona. As you mentioned, I've been involved with computerized maintenance management systems for nearly 25 years at this stage. I got involved in the CMMS world back in 1989, and the company that I worked with at that time had some history in relation to the oil and gas platform business. So prior to 1989 was the Piper Alpha disaster in the North Sea, where an oil rig exploded, taking 167 lives. So from that, regulation in the area, safety, oil and gas in that world, it stood out to me in my early days in the CMMS world. So a lot of the business that I was involved with back in the late 80s, early 90s was in relation to the oil business, and that's where I got to see a lot of regulation in play. So it stuck with me since, and it's provided a lot of insight for the material that we're going to talk to in the next 40 minutes.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Roy. And just a couple of very quick housekeeping items before I turn it over to Roy to present this topic. We are recording today's session, and we'll be sharing a link to the recording to all of those who registered. And I know many people who wish to attend but aren't able to attend live. We'll go ahead and send you that link. I do have the phones muted for that reason, because we do want to go ahead and get a clean recording that you could share with others in your team and with your colleagues. And I think that's it. Oh, at the end there will be a survey, and we'll have a couple of poll questions throughout, so be ready to respond to those because your feedback is important. So with that, Roy, I'm going to turn things over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Rona. So just following on there from my earlier introduction, I've been involved in the computerized maintenance management business for over 25 years. And as I mentioned, my background came initially from being involved in CMMS in the oil and gas business. And as I mentioned, the Piper Alpha disaster played a significant impact in the first organization that I worked with in the CMMS world. The managing director of that company was a former designer who was involved in designing the Piper Alpha rig. The Piper Alpha rig exploded in 1988, taking 167 lives, unfortunately. And later, following that, the Cullen Inquiry was set up. And the Cullen Inquiry was very critical of the Piper Alpha's operator, which was found guilty of having inadequate maintenance and safety procedures. So Lord Cullen, he made 106 recommendations from his report. Various responsibilities were discharged. Ultimately, regulations, many of them, came into play, particularly in safety-related and offshore installations. Some of the key topics that we would be familiar with that came from that would have been a clear focus on the permit to work systems, a focus on emergency response, and a focus on safety in the workplace environment. So there were a wide range of other regulations impacted as a result of that. As Rona mentioned, we're located here in Dublin, in Ireland. We have a team set up here now. We're focusing on account management, support, software development, project management, and consultancy. And particularly focused for me is our engineering services department, where we're offering a range of services to assist clients get up and running with their computerized maintenance management software, and also the re-implementation of computerized maintenance management software. So our team is combined of over 70 years of experience on the ground in typically manufacturing organizations, and we help organizations understand how best to implement the CMMS and how it can best maximize their contribution in their world. In terms of the compliance and regulation, in September we carried out a survey of our existing clients, and a big thank you must go out to the 217 of those clients who responded to us. They provided with us a wealth of information that enabled me to put together this presentation. This material was also presented last week at our Accelerate conference in Florida. The respondents provided feedback to us, and on this foil here it shows where the bulk of the information came from in terms of the industries that our clients represent. So as you can see, most of our clients sit in the manufacturing world. We have quite a few in the food and beverage world, healthcare and pharmaceuticals, life sciences, and areas like that are typically where we're going to see the regulation question coming up. So from that, we're going to hand over here to Rona, where we've got a poll, and let's see how the regulations and so on fit in your world.
Great. Thanks, Roy. So I've gone ahead and launched our first poll question, and Roy is asking, now we're limited to only 5 answers, but what regulations does your company comply with? Because this will help him determine where he wants to spend the most time today, so which are important to you. And by the way, something I neglected to mention earlier, if any questions arise during Roy's presentation, don't hesitate to enter them into the questions feature in your GoToWebinar panel, and Roy has agreed to respond to them at the end of the session. All right, so it looks like about 2/3 of the votes are in. And again, if you don't mind telling us, which regulations does your company comply with? Which are the most important? All right, it looks like all the results are, oops, a couple more. Give it a few more seconds. Great. Well, let me go ahead and share this with you. So, Roy, 85% of our listeners have to comply with OSHA. It's clearly a big one. 66%, or 2/3, with Environmental Protection Agency regulations. 17% with GMP, Good Manufacturing Practices, and 34% with ISO, and 7% with food and drug related. All right, I'm going to turn this back to you.
Okay, thank you, Rona. So the next foil is pretty much mapping that response that we've got today. So our survey in September provided us with very similar regulations. We have OSHA. It's quite a big impact in terms of regulation for most of our clients. The EPA, EHS, sitting there on the left-hand side. GMP and FDA sitting there second and third from the left. And ISO is called out there as well. So these were the broad, key, high-level regulations that most of our clients worked with. In addition to these regulations, there were quite a number of other regulations that our clients were complying with as well. Some of these were local, regional, federal, and some very specific to the business that our clients were involved in. So there's something for everybody here in this list, but it goes to show that our clients are using the CMMS to assist them in dealing with the regulations across the board here. We asked our clients how often does the auditor come to visit, and we were surprised. We had weekly listed on our survey, but certainly we have visits from the auditor monthly, quarterly, and yearly, and also some other unspecified frequencies as well. So the bottom line was that 20% of our clients were having a visit from an auditor at least monthly. We then boiled down the ISO standards, which is listed pretty high from the feedback we had from our clients. And there are a number of ISO standards out there today that our clients are seeing a real requirement for. ISO 9000, the quality management standard, is certainly high on the list. Almost all of our clients have some perspective on the use of that standard. The other standard that's starting to come into play that's very specific in the world of asset management is the ISO 55000 asset management. So my background goes back a little bit towards the creation of that standard. I worked with some people back in the day who were involved in PAS 55. That's now evolved into the ISO 55000 standard. Some definitions around some of these standards. ISO 55000 is the asset management standard today. It came into being earlier in 2014. It provides an overview of asset management, its principles and terminology, and the expected benefits from adopting asset management, and it can be applied to all types of assets and by all types and sizes of organizations. So it's an overarching asset management standard. The basis was PAS 55, and the questionnaire that goes with it is very, very detailed, and it provides a full life cycle to assist an organization from crawling through to walking through to running in terms of an overarching asset management strategy. ISO 14000 is the environmental management one. It addresses various aspects of environmental management. It provides practical tools for companies and organizations looking to identify and control their environmental impact and constantly improve their environmental performance. ISO 22000 is the food management one. It addresses food safety management and helps organizations identify and control food safety hazards. As many of today's food products cross national boundaries, standards are needed to ensure the safety of the food supply chain. ISO 50001 is the energy management standard, which supports organizations in all sectors to use energy more efficiently through the development of an energy management system. As results, organizations are able to save money and conserve resources. ISO 3166 is the country code standards. It's the international standard for country codes and codes of their subdivisions, and the purpose is to define internationally recognized codes of letters and or numbers that we can use when we refer to countries and subdivisions. 31000 is risk management, which helps organizations manage risk and perform well in an environment full of uncertainty. So risks can have consequences in terms of economic performance, professional reputation, as well as environmental safety and societal outcomes. And the big one is ISO 9000, the quality management standard, which addresses various aspects of quality management, providing guidance and tools for companies and organizations who want to ensure that their products and services consistently meet customers' requirements and that quality is constantly improved. So the focus is on primarily these standards. ISO 9000 is the big one. ISO 55000 is making an impact these days. What's important is that your organization is using the appropriate standards and regulations, and that there is no duplication within your organization in terms of the systems that are being used across the departments. So I guess one takeaway possibly from this particular presentation would be to engage with your quality manager on site or your quality management team to discuss how your organization is arranged in terms of the systems that are in place to ensure that there is no redundancy. Ensure that the data, the knowledge and the information is held in one place, and this is where your CMMS can come into play. We're going to have another poll, but just looking at this particular foil, we have a cartoon character on the eMaint website. His name is George. There's I think it's a 90-second cartoon that runs from the eMaint website. So sometimes when the auditor turns up, George can look like this. He may be a little uncertain as to what the auditor has knocked on the door for. And hopefully, as we go through the following slides, we'll see George becoming a little bit lighter at ease. So, Rona, if you can, maybe we can run the second poll, please.
Sure. So what Roy would like to get a feel for is Where are you today regarding using your CMMS, whichever CMMS you use, to help you comply with those regulations that we alluded to earlier? And again, I think the purpose of today's session is really opening your eyes that your CMMS is not just a work management tool, but it really can help with compliance. Some people don't always realize that that's a kind of a byproduct of it. So let us know either if you're not currently leveraging a CMMS for an audit, or perhaps you don't have one, or maybe you're using some reports to help, but you wish the process could be better, or perhaps you've done some configuration of your CMMS to help comply with audits, or lastly, it's really a breeze. Audits are a breeze, and because of the data from my CMMS, but you're still listening in to pick up some tips. All right, so looks like we've had all the votes in, so let me share the results with you. And looks like just about half, Roy, 49% are here today because they're not leveraging a CMMS for helping with compliance audits. 35% currently get some reports from their CMMS, but they feel it could be better. 14%, well, they've done some configuration to assist with audits. And then 2% say audits are a breeze. And we're envious. The other 98% are very envious, I'm sure. All right. Back to you, Roy.
Okay. Well, I'm glad there's somebody on the line that feel that audits are a breeze. Hopefully, as I say, when we get to some of the final slides here, our friend George will be feeling just the same. But for the 50% of the folks that are on the line who are not leveraging a CMMS, I'm hoping the next 10 or 12 slides will help in that regard. So typically what we do in the engineering services team is we break down presentations like this into the top 10 or 10 key messages that we like to suggest. So for regulations and conformance and compliance, we've got 10 keys to success. The first key to success in relation to how CMMS functionality can help is in relation to the functionality where we have the history of work completed. So our friend George, he's going to be very concerned that the history in relation to the work that he's completed is captured within his CMMS. The auditor is going to be interested in ensuring that the appropriate SOPs are being complied with, the appropriate standards and the interpretation of those standards are in compliance, and that the organization is in control and that there's evidence to prove that the organization is in control. So the history of work completed shows who did the work, how long it took, the documentation that's associated with the work, and an overall view of history of assets from cradle to grave. So within eMaint, the functionality that we've got is associated with the asset record, where the user can view all the work history and charges, both labor, parts and miscellaneous related to each asset, including work order type, status, due date and description. It helps organizations to pass the audits by providing detailed documentation on assets or equipment scheduling and proof of work to track mechanical integrity. So we've got an asset there on the screen. We can see an image of what that asset is, and where the arrow is pointing is showing a full history of work that's been carried out on that piece of equipment over time. eMaint allows organizations to associate procedures with PM schedules. We're talking about recording information that's either Soft documentation in Word or Google Doc or any type of PDF format, images, photographs, pictures, SOPs that can be associated with work completed. It's possible to associate multiple procedures with PM schedules, and when a PM is scheduled, we can generate the work order and associate procedures with that and copy work procedures onto a work order. It helps to pass the audit by providing documentation of the procedures and verifying that they are being carried out in accordance to written documentation procedures. Last week at the Accelerate conference in Florida, one of our colleagues from the Rapid City Regional Airport who use our CMMS, Doug Curry, he talked to our audience in relation to how the Rapid City Regional Airport has taken advantage of PM procedures. And he talked about, as the foil says, how Rapid City Regional Airport enters the PM procedures into the eMaint X3 system by copying and pasting from the Federal Aviation Administration website. PMs are then generated automatically, and shift chiefs can effortlessly assign open work orders to technicians at the start of their shift. The Rapid City Regional Airport is becoming an example and a template for small regional airports in this regard, and Doug is being asked to present more at related conferences and seminars, specifically in relation to how best to go about implementing the CMMS in the airport and aviation world. Attaching documents to records. eMaint allows users to upload documents, drawings, images, or any rich media documents to attach them to assets, parts, work orders, and contact records. This particular foil talks specifically to the lockout-tagout process and checklists. The image is showing how it's possible to attach additional documentation to a specific asset record. That documentation could be specific instructions and training required in order to carry out some work on a piece of equipment. The system can be configured to allow the lockout-tagout instructions to be presented with a work order every time a job is to be carried out on that specific piece of equipment. So the associated and appropriate lockout-tagout instructions for that piece of equipment can be presented with the work order. So it provides workers with easy access to safety manuals and procedures, documents, compliance, and it helps to track progress. I was with a client last week, and as I was being taken on a tour of the facility, the Cintas brand was on show on the lockers. And Cintas is one of our major clients. They've got implementation of eMaint at many facilities. They've been a client of ours since 2006. Most folks on the line, I'm sure, have heard of Cintas. They provide a lot of garments used in manufacturing industry and the dry cleaning services. In terms of lockout and tagout, Cintas created workflows to automatically print lockout tagout forms with relevant work orders to ensure compliance with OSHA regulations. So it's a time-saving step for them, as there can be over 70 lockout-tagout forms per location. So by utilizing the eMaint X3 integrated document hosting feature, each location has access to the same appendices, photos, drawings, parts lists, and detailed instructions for recurring boilerplate PMs on common equipment, making corporate mandated changes easier to implement globally. So Cintas are using a centralized system for allowing them to provide the lockout and tagout information across their organization. Tracking inventory and spare parts is another critical area in relation to compliance. eMaint provides functionality that allows users to track the history of parts that are associated with PMs and assets, and records which parts are in storeroom and at what level of accuracy there are. So accurate parts recording is critical. What parts are in what location, what's being used, what's critical, what's aging, what's obsolete, what parts are potentially GMP or GXP critical, and all so that the auditor can be assured that the information related to spare parts and inventory management is in control and that we've got the evidence to prove it. So eMaint helps pass the audit by accurately cataloguing spare parts, recording part history, and maintaining accurate parts storeroom valuations. Tracking labor and hours spent. The image that we're showing here is functionality that allows users to see when somebody has logged on to a work order and potentially signed off. So down to the second, we can track the interaction of users of the software and the work that's being done. So we're showing the sign-on, sign-off feature, which allows workers to start a timer when starting on a work order and stop midway through the work order to start again, right through until the work order is completed. This time is then allocated to the work order as a labor charge, and it will automatically be associated with that work order and accumulate the elapsed time as in hours, minutes and seconds. How does it help? It helps maintain accountability for all of the maintenance activities performed by each technician throughout the facility and the hours spent on each activity. This is especially important to understand exactly what's happening on the ground. There's a level of accountability involved here. Who's working on what, where and when. Are the correct resources being applied? Are they properly trained, and are they working on the right activities? This sort of functionality is especially useful in the facility management world, and especially in the FDA world, where timestamp and approval information is required. So for those of you who are interested in or in compliance with 21 CFR Part 11 from the FDA, the time, tracking and audit trail is critically important, and the use of a function like this really helps. There are a number of different timestamps that we would be interested in tracking in this world in relation to possibly when a work order was requested, the date and time a work order was scheduled, the date and time a work order was completed, and the date and time a work order was closed out. All of that information helps build up the audit trail, particularly for our clients in the FDA world. The auto-generating of PMs. The PM schedule and generation functionality within the eMaint product is a foundation stone for our product, and it's a foundation stone for most CMMSs. In this world, we find that compliance in relation to the schedules of work that needs to be done on a frequency basis, particularly for calibration type activity or regulatory type activity, that sort of work order needs to be generated on a frequency basis, and we need to see a work order every time we expect to see it generated. We've got functionality that allows for static preventive maintenance generation and shadow preventive maintenance generation. In the static world, we have a work order that will be generated regardless of whether it is completed or not. So the next time we expect to see that work order, we will see a work order regardless of if the previous one was completed or not. So for compliance, particularly in the calibrations world, we see a lot of static type preventive maintenance work orders. And we also allow for the generation of preventive maintenance work orders on a meter reading type basis as well. So this functionality, it allows the PM manager and the user to establish and auto-generate an unlimited number of calendar and or meter-based PMs for all assets. It helps organizations pass the audit by providing documentation of all completed and scheduled PMs on each asset. The dashboard functionality within our product provides the macro level view of what's going on in the organization. From the auditor perspective, they want to see the information, the KPIs that shows that our organization is in control. From that macro level view, the user can then drill down to exceptions. It's a starting point for an organization to self-monitor. It's transparent and it proves diligence, and it's the mechanism for providing continuous improvement within an organization to ensure that all of the appropriate regulatory marks, both internal and external, are being achieved. So the eMaint X3 functionality provides customizable reporting and dashboard tools to enable the user to create and modify reports and output them to text or PDF, charts or graphs, and add them to dashboards in order to generate, potentially email them to users automatically. It helps our clients to pass audits by allowing users to run reports and to show data required for inspections and audits, as well as generate reports and KPIs for management visibility internally. Work requests are a fundamental element of most CMMSs, so for eMaint it's no different. Work requests can be submitted by teams internally or even externally via email or an online form, or through the work request module itself. So within eMaint we've got 3 different options. The request can then be automatically routed to the appropriate individuals for approval. Why is it important? Well, it's important again for transparency, visibility. From a service level agreement and customer satisfaction perspective, timestamping related to these types of requests is important. It's also useful for the full overarching eyes and ears of an organization on the ground to get a perspective of the types of issues that are being requested across the organization. How does it help to pass the audits? It allows users to improve workflow efficiency and ensure on-time completion of work orders. Particularly important in this service level world where requests need to be closed within an appropriate time frame. One of our clients is Troy Design and Manufacturing. They've been a client of ours for the last 2 years. From their perspective, safety is a company-wide priority. Within their world, eMaint X3 is used to ensure that safety work orders are completed quickly and efficiently through notifications on MX Mobile. So other work requests are submitted by over 300 requesters through a link on their company portal or intranet. So they're using a combination of tools and technologies to capture work requests that ultimately become work orders within the eMaint X3 CMMS. eMaint provides also functionality that allows for email alerts. So the user can set up automated email alerts that notifies teams when documentation is needed to be updated, when safety-related PMs are needed to be performed, and when inspections are needed to be completed. So all of this functionality is provided for within eMaint. How does it help the organizations pass the audits? It keeps technicians up to date with inspections, with PMs and tasks from anywhere at any time. Calibration is extremely important for our clients, particularly in the FDA world. It's a big deal for our clients in regulated industries, particularly around maintaining credibility and certification. Calibration for safety lifting type equipment, load testing equipment, lanyards and so on. Anywhere there's a certificate required or a data sheet required to provide evidence of fitness for use. This functionality is heart and soul for an auditor to ensure that the organization is in control of its equipment, particularly equipment that's required for certification and particularly for critical items that fit that mold. So the eMaint X3 functionality allows users to manage, schedule and track calibration, as well as set calibration reminders on equipment and instruments. It helps to pass the audit by providing documentation of equipment calibration schedules and procedures and tracks completion of on-time performance. So those are the key 10 areas where we find our clients feel that X3 can help them pass compliance audits. They can pass compliance audits by tracking work order history, by documenting the procedures, by attaching those procedures or recording those procedures to assets or work order records, by tracking inventory and spare parts, by tracking the labor and the hours spent, by the automatic generation of preventive maintenance schedules, using the overarching macro reports and dashboards, and then drilling down into the exceptions, tracking work requests that follow on to become work orders that are date and time stamped, where there's an audit trail associated with all of the work that was done, automatically creating emails and alerts and notifications, and finally the tracking of preventive maintenance schedules in association with calibrations. So the 217 clients that provided me with the material for this presentation also provided us with some very useful quotes that they've allowed us to use. Associated Grocers say that when OSHA comes in, we have the proof now that we need at one click. One of our clients said that our last SQF auditor has seen eMaint at other food companies and stated it was a good choice. Silver Spring Foods, before we implemented X3, we scrambled to find documentation during customer and third-party audits. Now our auditor and quality control team are very happy customers. Some more success stories. We are able to more readily keep safety work orders on file for OSHA requirements and prove lockout tagout compliance by attaching a standard requirement notification on every work order. eMaint helps us keep the pertinent information all in one place. And through our equipment and PM history, eMaint demonstrates compliance to environmental sampling and equipment maintenance. So that's just some of the feedback from some of our clients from our survey in September. So following on from all of that and the quotes from our clients, it seems like those clients are in control. There are success stories. They're proving that the use of eMaint and the CMMS can help them with their compliance-related issues and become a success story where our cartoon character George is a hero once again. That's my presentation for today, everybody, and I'm now very happy to take your questions.
Great. Well, thank you, Roy. And again, for our listeners out there, if you don't mind just typing your questions, I will read them to Roy in the time remaining. All right. And Roy, one of the things, one question that came in is people were asking if you wouldn't mind going back to the slide with the different types of regulations and explaining what they all stood for some of our listeners that may not be familiar with them.
Okay, so there were quite a few regulations listed as secondary in our list, but certainly the primary regulations that most of our clients have some engagement with are on the slide that I'm presenting there now. So first up on the left is the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. The next two we're finding particularly important in organizations in the life sciences and in the food world, where we see GMP, which is good manufacturing practice, and a relationship with the FDA, Food and Drug Administration. There's a piece of the FDA's regulation that relates to functionality that we deal with within the eMaint product to do with audit trailing, which has got to do with a piece of regulation called 21 CFR Part 11. So those clients in the FDA and the GMP world will be familiar with that. We've also got HIPAA, Health Insurance Probability and Accountability Act. We've got MBIC, which is the National Board Inspection Code. We've got PED, which is the Pressure Equipment Directive. NAICS, which is the Healthcare and Social Assistance. ISO, which we break down further into all of the various ISO standards, is the International Standards Organization. EFQM is the European Foundation for Quality Management. The big one is OSHA, which is Occupational Safety Health Administration, and we find that EPA and OSHA tend to live in the same world. And then there were numerous other regulations that were local, federal, or specific to the organizations that provided the feedback to us in our survey. So I think there was something like 50 additional regulatory authorities that were mentioned in the survey.
Great, and we did have a listener ask if this software is what you presented today, much of it is for manufacturing, but can it also be tailored to facility maintenance, and can it be used, let's say, by a public works infrastructure, such as road maintenance? Do you have any thoughts on that, as far as the different industries that a CMMS can be applied to for compliance?
Absolutely. So we have clients in all that you've mentioned there, in the facility maintenance world, and also in local government world. So for linear assets, roads, train, public, we have clients in that world. So absolutely. The use of certainly handheld technology in the facility maintenance and management world is something that we see quite a bit of. It allows for technicians to be out and about, to have the tool of a PDA or a smartphone as a tool for their toolbox out and about, and it particularly allows them to start a work order as they're out visiting an asset. So we find that facility management, where the technicians are out and about, where there's a service level agreement that needs to be achieved, using the technology in the hand, providing the functionality that our clients in that world specifically require.
Excellent. If you want to go to your slide that summarizes the top 10, we had half of our listeners say, or nearly half, that they are not today utilizing a CMMS for compliance. So, and one of the things that I know our engineering team is always telling us that when it's a very large-scale project, you eat the elephant one piece at a time. And so for people that just wish to get started and make a start toward being able to make a step to use their system to help with compliance, tell us what you would recommend, Roy. If there was one takeaway that they can do and do first, what would that be?
Well, my colleague Greg Perry in the Engineering Services Department has a saying which is get started. So have a plan and start on the plan. The fundamentals of the functionality in a CMMS is ultimately to improve asset reliability. So some of the regulation and some of the standards that are there that would certainly help are PAS 55 that has now become ISO 55000. That's a standard that's out there that assists as a guide to help improve asset reliability. In order to understand asset reliability, the analysis of what is reliable and what's not reliable needs to take place. So the very first check mark on our list around tracking work order history, understanding what's being done, what the work is on, how important that work is, the criticality of the work, and the proposition of moving from reactive to proactive or planned maintenance. So if there was one thing an organization should be trying to do, is working to a plan that enables the movement from reactive to proactive work. So tracking what's being done is a very good first step in that regard.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Roy, for your time today and for putting this deck together and for sharing it. I know it's rather late in the day over in your world, and we really do appreciate it. And again, I'd like to thank all of our listeners out there for joining us. And I hope you found some value, and I hope it provoked some thought on how you can better utilize, as Roy said, whatever system you have in place. And I would like to ask one thing of our listeners today, and Roy and our team of consultants is there with such a wide range of topics and experience that they've worked with, and we want to make sure we're presenting sessions to you that really help solve some of the business problems that you're currently finding challenging. So there will be a survey at the end where we ask for suggestions on future topics, where we can do a little research or draw from our experience and even from our own client success and share them with the rest of you. So again, Roy, thanks so much for joining us, and thanks to our listeners today, and we hope we'll see you the next time. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, Rona.
Take care, Roy.